Alrighty, and we are live.
Hello, everyone. My name is Victoria Pua, and I'm alongside here with.
So my name is Daniel Gunwoo Choi, or Che Konu in Korean. I am a Korean American residing in Denver, Colorado. I am a full-time photographer, videographer, creative, and a makeshift community activist for Asian American rights, and also just for people in general. I just want to stop hate crimes and stuff. So yeah, that's a little bit about me. And Victoria, you got the floor.
Cool. My name is Victoria Pua. I am Filipino and Chinese, born and raised in Los Angeles. My family actually came here in the late 1960s, early 70s. So I'm technically first/second generation out here. I currently live in Austin, Texas. I've lived everywhere around. I'm a career coach as well as a corporate recruiter. So yeah, that's a little bit about me. I've been very passionate about the Asian American community in the US. I am an older millennial, so I was born in the early 1980s. I do remember when there was a magazine, by the way, Daniel, called A Magazine. And it was especially, you would have been like 5 at this point, but it was in the, yeah, actually it came out in the year 2000. And it actually stopped publication after 3 years because no readership.
Oh, wow.
And I was very involved at that time. I was in college, and it was something that I was so passionate about. I actually joined the Asian American Economic Development Council in Los Angeles County. So really passionate about everything. And given what's been happening this past year, my heart is really heavy as well. This has been I'm in shock every single day. I see news reports every single day, newspapers, social media. It's just way too much going on. And I think, when Daniel and I were really talking about everything, it's just to the point now where something needs to be said. It's made me so happy and so proud that so many other Asian Americans have really come out. Because it's been so long. It's been so long. And I think, Daniel and I have a lot to say. We've got so many different topics that are coming up. So yeah, we're excited to be here. This is our first podcast.
It is. I think just to give us some context, we both met when I was working at a co-working space as a community associate slash manager. I don't know what you want to call it, but mostly associate. Victoria was there working for Handshake, which a lot of people who are college students, Generation Z, they would know pretty well because Handshake is pretty much the LinkedIn of college world. So yeah, she was. You were working as a corporate recruiter for was it software development?
I was.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that's where we met, and I remember onboarding you, and not seeing too many Asians. I think whenever if you are Asian, I was, we were just like, this is awesome. It's awesome. So yeah, I mean, that's how we met. And yeah, but ever since then, we kept in touch. You are what I consider to be my Filipino mother. Mother, we did saw each other in Austin about a week ago. It's been about 8 days. It's been a hot minute since we last saw each other. So yeah, but
well, Jen, you're my Korean baby brother. Can I call you that?
That's about right. You're my older sister who just.
I don't have any brothers, so that's awesome.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah. Wait, let's talk about it. I know with the recent small shooting, the shooting in Atlanta, the target 3 massage parlors targeting Asian women. I think we need to really talk about where all this rhetoric started within the last year. And I think according to our article, it was 3,700 or 3,800 plus hate crimes reported last year in the United States against Asian Americans. and a lot of people have attributed this to President Trump's rhetorics, calling China virus, calling it Wuhan flu, Kung flu. What are your thoughts about that? Do you think those rhetorics are actually really the cause of everything, or do you think that there's a much bigger history behind all these hate crimes that's been going around against Asian Americans?
You know, that's a great question. I think that this was kind of the what basically broke the camel's back.
Mm,
I think it's been festering, and I think it's been there for quite some time. Um, Now that all of this has happened, there have been just a lot of cases that people are bringing up from a long time ago. For example, Vincent Chin,
mm,
back in the early 1980s, when we had an economic depression.
mm,
Um, and a lot of Japanese car makers were coming here to the US. This poor man was beaten up and killed, because people thought that Japanese companies were going to take over uh, American car makers.
mm. Actually,
And what's really sad too is he wasn't even Japanese.
he was Chinese, if I remember correctly,
He
right?
was Chinese, correct? Yeah.
This kind of reminds me of this restaurant in that just got vandalized in San Antonio. You probably heard of it because you live in Austin. And it was a Japanese ramen restaurant that
Ugh.
is owned by owned by Vietnamese people that had the word COVID-19, was a China virus, Kung flu. And I was thinking in my back of my mind, I was like, these racists are so stupid. They can't even get their racism right. It's like it's really sad, but it also reminds me of Vincent Chen. Like he was targeted as Chinese, or not Chinese, but Japanese, but he was Chinese, and it's like
Hmm.
they're so ignorant to the point where like they can't even get the racism right. They can't even get the people who they are trying to get right.
Hmm.
So yeah, I think Vincent Chen is actually a very important point because I think if I remember correctly, that's when the very first hate crime legislation was passed was because of his death.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah, absolutely. But there's more to that. By the way, I'm a history minor. If we go down to the gold rush
mm,
in the 1800s, where there was the Chinese Exclusion Act um, going on, people didn't want uh, Chinese folks to kind of to be around to work in the throughout the gold rush. And there was a lot of hate with many Asian Americans opening up dry cleaners, opening up restaurants. Um, and from then on, I think that that's why so many, even down to the present days, why so many um, Asian people who come here from other countries, that's where they migrate towards,
mm,
is opening those restaurants and opening dry cleaners, donut shops, nail shops, however that might be. And I think that that really started because it's kind of to the side.
mm,
During that gold rush, it was like people needed to eat. Well, they didn't want to work alongside anyone who was from China. So all of a sudden it was, oh, okay, well, you go ahead and take care of the restaurant because that's what we need.
mm. So it's kind of like we pick up the dirty work because I know that the Chinese were considered to be essential, but also it's like essential, but also undesirable
Right. Right.
because this is right after slavery. This is after
Mm-hmm.
Civil War, and
Yep.
I think one a very important piece of legislation that we need to talk about is the Page Act. I
Yeah.
think five. I think that was before the Chinese Exclusion Act, which banned all Chinese people, but the Page Act banned Chinese women for being prostitutes, for being immoral. And would you agree, like, this is the same line of rhetoric that Robert Long did his shooter used to justify his shooting of three Asian parlors? Because
Oh, absolutely.
I'm from Atlanta, and like, there's a lot of strip clubs and there's a lot of sex trafficking going out there. Like, it has one of the biggest sex trafficking rings because of I think three intersections, three highways go through it.
Mm-hmm.
Go to like New York, Washington D.C. You can go all the way to like St. Louis, Florida. So
May I ask you, since you know that obviously you're from that region, are there a lot of Asian people that migrate toward there because of that?
so that I don't know. I do know
Okay.
that there is a lot of sex trafficking going on in Atlanta, Georgia. Um, for Asian women, I believe there is a good amount. The,
I did not know that.
yeah, it is a hot
Wow.
for sex trafficking, and I think yeah, and I think it upsets me because people want to focus on the sex trafficking part rather than the actual like this is the actual hate crime part, and they use that as an
Mhm.
excuse. So it's like we in the Asian community know like sex trafficking is real. We do know that our women are being sex trafficked. We do know that a lot of I mean Korean women were forced into becoming sex slaves for the Japanese. Uh,
Mhm.
the Japanese raped and killed people in Nanking in
Mhm.
1937. So it's like this is nothing new, but I think that's what frustrates me is I think they focus on the sex addiction part rather than the actual okay, like why would he target those places in the first place? You know,
Yeah.
it's like he could have targeted strip clubs, he could have targeted other places like that.
Yeah. And I think that brings, an even bigger topic, I would say, is looking at women as objects.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's save that for another episode. I know right now we definitely want to focus on the whole COVID situation. Daniel, how have you felt this past year before even the Atlanta situation that happened
I felt hopeless.
since COVID?
Hopeless. That's how I felt.
Mm,
I felt hopeless and helpless.
yeah.
Every single day because I follow Asian centric news on Instagram and Facebook. That is more catered to the Asian American population rather than the mainstream media.
Mm,
They're reporting new hate crimes pretty much every single day. It's been happening all over the United States, specifically in LA, San Francisco, the Bay Area, New York,
mm-hmm.
Texas. But it's like I think it's like every single day something's new is happening. Someone's getting killed. And I think what makes me upset is that the people who have been getting assaulted, mugged, even killed, are the elderly,
Yeah.
Asian elderly. And in Asian culture, we both share Confucianist values. We regard them as the highest
Mm-hmm.
in our society, and for
Absolutely.
them to get hurt, for them to get assaulted, for them to just get murdered,
Mm-hmm.
um, it's just it makes me it got me I'm fearful of my parents' life right now.
Mm-hmm.
I'm fearful for my aunts, my uncles.
Have you had an incident happen to you in this past year?
So I've been very, very fortunate I have not. But
Okay.
I always keep an eye out. I think the main reason why is because living here in Denver, Colorado, Denver is pretty progressive.
Mm-hmm.
I think like I had a lot of like microaggression. I had a lot of like things that, but not any incidents like big incidents. I think also it does help that I'm a very confrontational person, and I'm 180 pounds, 5'7", 180 pounds. I'm a bigger dude, but I do know that for a lot of other Asian Americans, that is not the reality.
Yeah. Yep. I did actually have a small event happen to me, not event, but a situation happen.
Mm,
When I was in Denver last year, I usually take a run around a big park by the botanical gardens
mm-hmm,
in Denver, and I was running around, and someone came up to me and asked me for directions, and I gave this person directions, and then after I gave him directions, he looked at me and said, "Where are you from?" And I just said, "Oh, I'm from Los Angeles because that's where I'm from." And he said, "No, you're not." And I said, "I've got to go right now," and I just left. I didn't want to continue the conversation because I knew I was going to get upset.
Mhm. It could have been.
And I think exactly. And I think right there that says a lot too, because who knows what that person, even just that, where are you from? All of a sudden I was just like, okay, like all, my hair is standing up. You know
mm,
what I mean? Because of what's been going on with COVID. I don't want to say fear or scared, but it was a mix of emotions.
mm,
Like, oh my gosh, what is this person about to say? Oh my gosh, what is he about to do? Um, and I think that that has really upset me this past year, that I feel so on guard
mm. Have you ever?
that I can't.
Oh, you're saying my
Go
bad.
ahead. No, no, go ahead.
I'm no. I was just gonna ask a simple question, but have you ever been on guard like this before?
No, I haven't. I was fortunate enough to grow up in Los Angeles in a very, multi-ethnic community. So I've never had to feel on guard. But then once COVID hit, for some reason, it just some switch went on to me. Some switch went on inside of me, like, okay, be careful because of what we were seeing in the news.
Mm. And even without the news, would you still be on guard, or like you didn't see the news, or like don't know if like all the hate crimes is going on?
I'm gonna say yeah.
Mm,
Um, I don't know what it is about nowadays. It's just there's a different environment that's going on. Even if I didn't see the news or anything like that, I would still feel on guard.
mm.
Just and I can't tell you why. I can't pinpoint and say this is why. Um, but yeah, I think it's honestly because of COVID, without the news or anything like that. Just seeing, if you know one sentence where it's like, oh, it started in Wuhan, you can kind of put the pieces together as to what's going on. Fast forward to today.
So I think for myself, the hardest part to process about all this is, um, I think me and you we both talked about we both have experienced a lot of discrimination and racism.
Yeah.
And it's not microaggressions, like actual racism.
Hmm.
What like I think for myself, like what has been on my mind a lot lately is, especially about COVID, is how I really do think the mainstream media really has put a target on our backs.
Hmm.
Mainstream
Yeah.
media and President Trump's rhetorics, and I don't know. I'm very upset at both. Like I guess I'm very upset at the political spectrums right now. Like I'm very upset at both the
Hmm.
Democrat and the Republican parties right now. Specifically, the Republican Party, I'm very very upset about, because
Hmm.
they have kind of backed this sort of anti-coronavirus rhetorics. Like I don't get it. Like they call it like a hoax. They say like it's not true, but then they keep talking about how it's like from China, and I'm just like, okay, like you got to pick a side
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
for your like. Have you for yourself like have you seen any politicians, anyone who really has stood up for us, or do you think like both parties have sort of just used this for their own advantage to just for their own political gain? I mean, I know that sounds kind of weird, but I know it's really a topic right now.
Yeah. The candidates that the people that I have seen in a political spectrum, definitely Andrew Yang.
Mm,
I've seen him in regards to recently. There have been folks out there. I would say if, it would be Congresswoman Mazie Hirono
yeah,
from Hawaii,
yeah, she has.
uh, for sure. So I would say those two. Growing up, honestly, I can't really remember from this point, but this has been the most. I'll be honest with you. This is the most I've seen in regards to Asians in government than I've ever seen before.
So I actually think that's a really good point. So let me ask you a question. Why do you think Asians don't partake in government policy reforms or anything like that as a
I'm so glad you brought up this question. So, by the way, folks, I'm political science and history. Um, because of the way government is in the respective countries that people are from.
Mm.
So in communist China, you don't talk.
Yep.
Nobody gets involved in politics there. And I don't know. I honestly think it's years of, for example, Vietnam.
Mm,
Just a whole mess from the communist days. You've got what's going on in Myanmar,
mm.
having so much military, as well as Thailand has a terrible background. They've had, I think, about 10 or 11 prime ministers
It's
within
like
the last like 20 years.
yeah,
Yeah.
every single year, Myanmar,
Yep,
Thailand.
exactly. In the Philippines, you had a dictatorship for 30 years.
Mm.
Um, yeah, so the Marcos era. So you've got that whole thing. And South Korea as well. There's been so much that's happened, especially since um, the Korean War. And there was that whole, as you know, the whole communist and not and democracy sort of thing. And I think all of that says a lot about why Asians don't participate in government.
I actually agree because in South Korea, the government, if you like, because give you some context as well. I mean, like, you know this as well. Like, just for people who are listening, I'm a poli sci major. Um, international affairs and international and military affairs, and
Mhm.
I think I forgot what's his name for the Philippines, but he was assassinated. I forgot his name. His daughter became like the president. He was assassinated right when he landed in the Philippines, and he
Oh, uh-huh. Benigno Aquino.
Aquino, yeah, and Aquino,
Yeah.
this guy stood up to a like it's so ironic like how he stood up to a dictatorship and
Mhm.
took his death to take that dictatorship down. But looking at like a lot of these dictatorships, like in Korea, if you look at the Philippines, Thailand, they were U.S. supported,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
Even in Vietnam, like South Vietnam, that Buddhist monk who killed himself in that fire, he did it in protest of the president of South Vietnam because he was being a tyrant towards the people who were Buddhists because he was Catholic.
Yeah.
There's so much to unpack, and they're all U.S. Supported because they're anti-communist.
Mhm.
They're so tyrannical to their own people.
Mhm.
I think we need
Yeah.
to talk about that, and I think that's why a lot of Asians don't want to be in U.S. politics. Is because as much as they're glad to be in the U.S., they seen what the U.S. policies have been support, and they're like, I don't want to support this because we
Yeah.
it happened in our country.
Yeah. Absolutely. You know, it's funny, Daniel. I actually watched, I want to say a few weeks ago, um, a gentleman who was interviewed. He was Asian. He was, I believe he was Chinese American. I could be wrong. And he had been in the United States for like 50 years, still alive. And they asked him, why don't, why don't you protest or why don't you kind of stand up for everything that's been going on? And he answered really simply, and he said, because we've tried that before and nobody listened. And I think that says a lot because we always talk about what's in front of us, right? We talk about being first, second generation. We don't think about the people who've been here since World War II. There's a ton of Japanese Americans, and I know you're out there, that their grandparents, um, a lot of Chinese Americans who came here, Vietnamese Americans. And now it'll be, um, let's see, if they were 20, 30, even 10 years old, they're probably a little bit just older from me. So there's a lot there. And I, just like what we were saying, because of how much struggle was going on every which way during the 20th century, um, when he said that, that really got to me. It almost kind of felt like he was, what he was trying to say is, we're tired.
Like we're helpless.
Yep. Like no one's going to care no matter how loud we speak. And that really saddened me.
I was really thinking about how it took all this has happened. It took,
Hmm.
I guess, a wide acceptance of Asian culture,
Yeah.
like anime, K-pop, K-dramas, even Chinese dramas, um, to like we are, I believe, 23 million people strong now as Asian
Yeah.
Americans. We're the fastest growing minority group in the world in the United States.
Hmm.
Um,
I wonder too if that bothers people.
I think yes and no. I think it's because of the model minority myth. We've
Hmm.
kind of been we've been like, yeah, like they are they are American. They're if you look at it into like America, a lot of it's like whiteness.
Hmm.
Because we're smart and necessarily like we're smart and we're successful. We be quiet. We don't have the victim mentality, but I think a lot of them are scared, and a lot of it's because of China starting to try to dominate the world now.
Hmm.
Uh,
Yeah.
because some of China's move, let's be honest, are kind of scary from my own perspective as a American.
Hmm.
Though I believe Russia is actually a bigger threat right now, but I think this is the same sort of rhetoric that was common during World War II against
Yeah.
Americans.
Yeah.
And what makes me mad is like no matter because people are saying Trumpers are saying like Joe Biden he works for China.
Hmm.
So that's the
Personally, I think he works for Putin, but that's neither here or there.
I can we can go deeper into that another time, but
Yeah, sure.
I think that's what it is. I think this is equivalent us to the Chinese, even though I'm not Chinese. You're half Chinese. I mean, and even then we fled from a lot of people who are Chinese. They fled from communism,
Yeah. Yep.
and I think that's really upsetting to a lot of Asian Americans. Is like no matter how much we try to assimilate into this country, no matter how token, like we're like that token friend, we
Hmm.
are still the enemy to these people.
Yeah. And that's what I always say to every single Asian person, know your history, know your background. You'll be really surprised at what it is. Yeah. I see you nodding. So yes.
Learning about the Page Act and learning about the Chinese Exclusion Act, learning about the act that banned Japanese and Korean immigrants from coming in from 1924. It's painful. It hurts. It hurts a lot. And then learning about like there's a lot of I think we talked about this. There's a lot of resentment in the Black community towards Asians, specifically
Yeah.
I think Koreans, which let's be honest, a lot of Koreans we've been pretty unfair to our Black brothers and sisters. But I think if you dive into that history and see why they moved into black areas to create businesses, it's because for a lot of Asians, they're forced into it because there's no jobs available.
Yeah.
Even though,
And see, I had a very different experience. So my grandparents moved here in the early 70s. And so when they moved here, they could only buy a home in certain areas
yeah,
of of the city that we were in. And we lived with our grandparents for a few years. They lived in a predominantly African American neighborhood.
mm-hmm.
And we got along really well.
Mm-hmm.
So seeing what's been going on, in regards to what you're talking about, is just so shocking for me. Don't get me wrong. I mean, and so I have, much love and and admiration and absolutely wonderful relationships with African Americans. And to see this happening right now has just been so, like I said, just shocking. I just didn't know it was to this level as well.
I think
Meaning the whole, like, beating people up and shoving folks. I mean, I'm just wow.
Um, I think like I said, we both have very different experiences.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of it's also like like the Chinese or Korean shop owners who were in black areas. I mean, they came into black areas, and black people have been oppressed for 400 plus years plus segregation. And imagine like you've been oppressed, and these people come into your area that they become semi pretty well off because of it. Granted, a lot of there was a lot of work, but I think yeah, I think it's something that we have to talk about. But obviously that's a different topic. We have it's probably like a different time. But the reason why I think that hits home for me is because I remember I posted a photo on Instagram in my story, and it was the Korean rooftop, the rooftop Koreans during the LA riots. And the
Yeah.
LA riots, the Koreatown burned to the ground.
Hmm.
But I have a friend who was black. He saw the photo and he was like very hurt by it.
Hmm.
We had a
Yeah.
pretty lengthy conversation, and
Hmm.
he was like he's like I understand like what's going on. Like I'm very against anti-Asian hate crimes, and he's like you're a friend to me, but he also said he said seeing that photo would not help Asian black relationships. And then I think that brought the topic like it's a very broken relationship right now.
Hmm. Yeah.
Um,
I think, and again, that just makes me sad because I'm all about the individual person, and it just saddens me because I don't know where this like vitriol hate is coming from in the black community. Other than the history, like you were mentioning, but other than that, because it's pretty violent.
I think a lot of it's a history.
You think so? Okay.
If you look at some of the movies, Friday, if you look at some of the movies, I mean, there's like Asian shopkeepers,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
like a lot of it was, I believe, our fault for Asians.
Mm-hmm.
We treated a lot of them wrong. 1991, I think the LA riots was a combination of violent crimes, or I would say violent crimes, but I think violent incidents.
Mm-hmm.
One was the Korean shopkeeper who she murdered a black girl who she claimed
I
that
remember that.
and that and then other incidents like that is just it hurts. It hurts him a lot. So I think in the black community, there's a lot of justified. I wouldn't say hate, but justified. I guess what's the correct word? Um, not resentment. I'm trying to think what's the right word for it. Like justified anger towards Asian Americans, and I think, and a lot of it's our older generation.
Mm-hmm.
Because let's be honest, a lot of Asians are racist. Like, let's be honest.
Ladies and gentlemen, that will be another topic that we will be talking about.
We do need to address that, though.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, I know. Yeah. I think, definitely COVID for me. I've been so much worried about about me actually getting the virus rather than all of this that's been going on. But then obviously, with all these recent attacks, which I thought was really interesting because there were a lot of attacks at the beginning of COVID, and then all of a sudden, like 2 months ago, it almost like it took a break, and then it came right back again. And I don't know what the heck happened. I don't know if maybe there were things already going on throughout the year, but I kind of felt like, March, April, May, was really the huge point where a lot was happening. And
Mhm.
then, maybe in the media, it kind of just quieted down. And then all of a sudden, these past 2, 3 months, it's been, well, I would say the past 2 months, there's just been so much going on now.
Yeah, I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's because of the election. I don't know if it's just like a part of me feels like it's just I don't know. I think people are just I think it's a lot of things. I think people are just fed up with COVID restrictions. I think
Yeah.
they blame us for. I think a lot of people blame us for bringing the virus, and like for disrupting their normal lives, and I think it's also a lot of it is just resentment about their election. I don't know. It's just I don't know what it is. It's just I think a lot of it is also like it's copycat crimes.
That's what I was going to bring up. Yep,
I think a lot of these are
I could
copycat.
totally see that.
Um, because there's a movie in Japan called Suicide Club, which is a kind of a movie that I want to say I really love, but I like watching that movie because it's a huge satire on society in general. It's very very graphic though, very it's a very messed up movie. But the satire, there was a bunch of random suicides going on, group suicides, and they were trying to figure like what's going on, and I think they're all copycat suicides too. They're like, it's like what is going on? And I think a lot of it that's what it is. It's just copycat murders, copycat crimes.
Mhm.
And they're like, let's just target Asians because they're easy to mug, they're easy to kill,
Mhm.
they're easy to just, yeah. I think that's why they're targeting them,
Yeah,
especially older Asian women. That's the thing that makes me mad. Is most of the crimes are not against like people our age. It's been against
it's the older
the
community.
older community, and that's what fears
Mhm.
me. That really makes me mad.
Yeah, yeah, and just like you said, we come from a culture where, um, many, and pretty much all Asian cultures, where our elderly is respected.
Mm-hmm.
It hurts me a lot too. It hurts me to see that poor man who was shoved, and to the many others that were shoved and have been hurt. It's awful. It's absolutely awful because some of them, it's hard for them to walk.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I just don't know. I don't know why it's the elderly. I think the only thing I can think of is that they're defenseless. They can't, you know, they can't turn around and defend themselves, and that hurts me more.
Yeah, I can't put my finger at it. And I think what scares me is that now it's starting to become younger and younger, the people who they're targeting.
Yeah,
I think that
yeah,
scares me. And uh, I think it scares me how, and it is like, like that guy on Wall Street, who got stabbed.
hmm
He was like 30, he was really young,
hmm
and then like hearing stories about people who are young, about my age, getting harassed at restaurants and getting, like harassed. I think there was a there was like multiple times where like these entitled rich people, mostly who are white, they will not commit violent acts, but they will do more of like they would just say things that they would just be super racist. They would do racist attacks, and it's like a lot of times they get recorded and they just act like nothing happened. You know,
yeah,
it's like these people are becoming a little too. They're becoming very very comfortable. And I knew the moment they become very comfortable, they're gonna start attacking people. And that's what happened to Rob Long. He claims it was sex addiction. Me personally, seeing like after hearing his background, hearing that he came from a church, that his dad's a youth pastor, that their church was very fundamentalist.
hmm
Um, we need to talk about that. We need to talk about.
yeah. Let's talk about it.
I grew up in a place like that. I grew up in Georgia, and they that sort of white Christianity is very like you have to be pure. I think a lot of them are very racist. They just don't admit it.
hmm
Um, they want you to be as I guess American as possible, which AK is white as possible. And I think for him, he did have sex addiction, like he needed a scapegoat, and and I think his scapegoat were Asian massage parlors because he probably fetishized them,
Yeah,
but then he was being brainwashed and they're like, hey, you need to stop doing this, this is evil, like you need to tackle your evilness, and the evilness was Asian women. and that's rooted
Yeah.
in racism, and that's why the Page Act was enacted to ban Asian women because they were immoral. And what people forget, I said this a million times, and I will say a million times more. A surviving witness said in Korean to the Korean Atlantic Times, stated that Robin Long, the subset, said in English, "I am going to kill all Asians."
He did.
Yeah, he did. It was in the Korean Atlantic Times, and it was reposted by I think it was a Chosun News, which is the largest Korean news agency. But I don't see no mainstream media reporting that.
Yeah. Yep. Yep.
Huh.
I didn't even see the mainstream media reporting anything before what happened. It was here and there. They did, special stories at the end of the news
Yeah.
or any, but it wasn't to this extent. I mean, there was a CNN anchor who started breaking down and crying because of what she went through. A lot of actors and actresses have come out. And then obviously the protests over the weekend, which I thought was incredible,
Mhm.
which was great. So right now I'm actually, really, really happy after so many years of trying to really be active in the Asian American community and really not getting anywhere for myself. It's been great to see everyone unite.
Yeah, I think the best part is like I think Asian Americans from all political backgrounds, especially
Mm-hmm.
people who supported Trump or people who are communists, they're coming together over this. I have not seen one Asian American who is not supporting this. Not one.
That's
Maybe
incredible.
like, and I mean in real life, not maybe like some like there's this one chick, and her name is one girl. I say she chick. That's not the best term, but this one political pundit. Her name, I think it's political pundit. Her name is like Danielle Ray. Danielle Ray. I think she's like mixed. I
Okay.
think half Chinese, half white, but she's like a huge Trumper, and she's like claiming like all this is not a hate crime, and she's saying all you Asian activists are terrible, and you guys are
Are you
just
serious?
yeah. She's like attacking it because she's been attacking one Facebook page called one Instagram page called Asians with Attitudes, with Nick Shark, and they just roasted her. They're like, and like I was scrolling through her Instagram, and I was like, she's like, I can't tell she's Asian because of her experience. Like it feels like she had a very whitewashed experience. And I'm not saying there's nothing wrong with having a whitewashed experience, but I think for her, it's just like from what I've seen, she tries really hard to kind of fit into that crowd.
Hmm.
I'm just like, why are you trying so hard?
Mm-hmm.
These people are going to see you. These people see you as like kind of like their token Asian friend. These, because that's what I try to fit in with, like,
Yeah.
and it did not work. No matter how much you try to fit in, they will always see you as different. They'll always, if you agree with them. I remember this. This was so messed up. I remember back in my 8th grade class. It was kind of, I wouldn't say like a race war, but it was definitely some racial tensions going on in my 8th grade class.
Mm-hmm.
Short story short, there was a teacher. She came from the hood. The teacher that she replaced was a white teacher. Her name is Miss Willis. And then this other teacher, I forgot her name because she was there for short. She's from the hood, and she was a little tougher on the kids because she's from Southwest High School in Macon, and she's from the hood. Like she had to be strict, because those kids are terrible. And one day she wouldn't let, I think, people go to the restroom. And then I think all the white students like stood up and like went out because they're like, "Oh, you suck," and the only people who stayed there were black, and I stayed. And then it kind of felt like I was like this token kid, like I was like this proxy person. It's like whoever got me won. Like it was so messed up. Like it got to the point where the principal got involved. I think the superintendent, superintendent got involved. Like it was pretty bad. Like it was because it was like racial tensions in 8th grade. Like I was like, wow.
Uh-huh.
And it's like I've always been like that. I've always been like kind of like that one Asian friend, and it's like I don't want to be the one Asian friend. I just want to want to be your friend, dude. Like appreciate you always emphasizing my Asian culture, but at the same time, they kind of never like give me a chance to be Asian or be myself, you
Yep.
know.
Mm-hmm.
But they always kind of emphasize it, so they don't feel bad. But then the moment you try to
Interesting.
express yourself, they're kind of like, oh, I don't know about that. I don't think you eat kimchi in my house.
Hmm. Okay.
I experienced a lot of that. Uh,
Okay.
Now a lot of them they're very curious, and I think they're not. I think a lot of it's like they're just not really exposed to our culture.
Yeah.
But it's also I had to be very like they also from like I had to call a lot of those guys people off because they've been super silent during all this. I don't feel supported for them, and also they have made some pretty messed up comments about this. One person I made a video about. You probably seen it. I was talking about I posted on Facebook, and I was like, hey, like, I was like, this is something we need to talk about. All the hate crimes. I was like, people. I talked to people who are Trumpers, Trump supporters, all the way to people who are Asian communists. It's like this transcends political views because now it's like a people issue.
Mm-hmm.
And then I had my ex roommate, so-called friend. I'm just gonna call him out and he was like, Troy, why are you talking to Asian communists? I was like, why do you care? He's like, communism is bad. And then I was like, after that, like I knew like just like side comments like that to dehumanize you, to say screw you to your own opinions, or I want to say opinions like your own experience.
Mm-hmm.
That's how a lot of them treat me.
It's interesting because not funny, but it's interesting because most people who say they don't like communists, I think that just a suggestion, ask them what it is because they can't tell you what it is.
Yeah.
They'll be like, "Oh, communism is bad." Okay, so what does being communism mean? And then you get like complete silence.
Hmm. Yeah, and it's like okay, like what's like for me, like me and you, we're I'm anti-communist.
Mm-hmm.
I'm assuming you are as well because we came from places that communism has pretty much destroyed places.
Yep.
But at the same time, like we know why we're
Mm-hmm.
anti-communist. Where I feel like a lot of people they don't even know what the word communism even it means. They
Yep.
don't even know how
Exactly.
any Karl Marx works.
Mm-hmm.
They know about Karl Marx, but can you recite like his manifesto?
Mm-hmm.
I bet
Yeah.
a lot of them like, I don't know.
But they just know. And I think that that says a lot too. I think a lot of what we're seeing with all the hate, the hate that's been going on, and all of that, like you were mentioning, copycat. It, I start to wonder too. Do you even know why you're doing it at a certain point?
Yeah,
Okay, yes, we know it's because of kung flu and all those other things, but because it's been happening so much, I just wonder if it's like you're just doing it just to do it for attention, or because you're seeing what's going on. That does happen.
we're living at a time where cloud is a currency.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Exactly. Exactly.
This is I don't know. It's like I don't
So
know.
Daniel, how are we doing on time, by the way?
We are about an hour in.
Okay. Well, I think this is a great first episode of
Mhm.
our podcast. So for our next one, we're going to be picking a topic. What do you say, Daniel? What are you thinking of in regards to next time around? Do you want to just surprise everyone?
We'll surprise everyone. Yeah.
Okay,
Uh,
awesome. So we'll post this. We invite you to post any comments that you have. We're going to be doing something on Facebook Live.
Probably Facebook Live. I'll try to see if we can do it on Clubhouse as well, Instagram Live. I mean, we're trying to be modern, hip, and on SpongeBob. We're trying to be Coral. We're not trying to be.
Yeah, and feel free. Let us know. Again, just wanted to put it out there. This is myself and Daniel's opinions. Obviously, everyone has different opinions, everyone has different experiences. We always invite you to share them. We will be coming to, once we do receive your comments, questions, anything like that, we definitely will read them out loud. So feel free to write or say anything that's on your mind.
Yeah, and we're willing to listen to any sort of views that might be different from ours. I mean, we're here to kind of like talk, but also to collaborate and just learn, because there's so much that we can learn. So,
Absolutely. Well, thank you, everyone, and I look forward to hearing from you. We'll be back with you again next week. Bye now.
fine. And I stop recording. So